Hello, I'm Tom Parker and welcome to Voices from the CEPS Ideas Lab. In this episode, I spoke with Laura Tyson. Laura is an influential scholar of economics and public policy and an expert on trade and competitiveness, who has also served as a presidential advisor to Bill Clinton. She is a distinguished professor of the graduate school at the Haas School of Business, University of California, Berkeley. She also chairs the Board of Trustees at UC Berkeley's Blum Center for Developing Economies, which aims to develop solutions to global poverty. During our interview, we talked about industrial and innovation policies, tariffs and the global trade landscape, as well as the Trump administration's goal to bring global wealth back to the US and the impact that this could have on the world order. I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, welcome, Laura. Thanks very much for giving me some of your time.
Thank you very much. Happy to be with you.
Well, it's a big first question to get involved with, but I want to ask, what's the aim of the Trump administration? Is it, and I know it's sensationalist in the words that I use, is it more about transactional deal making, would you say, or is it about pushing a new ideology aimed at fundamentally changing the global order?
I think it is fundamentally clearly in the statement MAGA America. He is interested in every policy lever that he has at his disposal, or that he can make up for that matter, to bring production and investment and employment from the rest of the world back to the United States. That is his fundamental goal. And I think he was absolutely clear about this in his statement at Davos, where he basically said, look, I put up a tariff wall, and that's a disincentive for you to sell into the United States. I'm going to lower corporate tax rates. That's going to be really attractive for you to produce in the United States. Yep. That combination is going to lead to a tremendous investment and movement of production to the United States. I think that's the goal. Okay, whether it's a transaction agreement in one case or it's a threat of a tariff in another case, the modalities you use to get what you're trying to get vary and are unpredictable. They're completely unpredictable.
Well, when looking at, say, tariffs or trade policies, when we're looking at the US as an innovation sort of hub and trade policies, how do they work together? Are there potential risks of innovation policies that could affect global trade, and how maybe does the US or some countries address this?
Well, look, I think there's a tremendous risk to the United States in terms of innovation, because one thing that tariff walls do is to protect existing domestic competitors. Yeah. So U.S. firms, if they don't face the same amount of international competition, are going to be less likely to innovate. Why not just keep up with what you're doing because you got a good market position, it's protected by the tariff? I don't really need to innovate. So economists have always thought that one of the biggest negative effects of tariffs is on innovation. You know, you sort of think the effect of a tariff is on a higher price. Yeah, it is on a higher price. Or effect of a tariff might be generating, if there's retaliation around the world, there's likely to be a global slowdown. So maybe the immediate effects of tariffs are higher prices and slower growth. But the longer term effects are actually depressing on innovation, because the key thing about market systems is the force of competition driving innovation.
I mean, have there been examples, especially maybe in US history, where actually imposing tariffs has actually worked before? And it's a leading question because I don't think there has.
You know what? Yes, they did. But you have to go way back in history, okay? You have to go back to basically the formation of the United States. Okay. And we were essentially an emerging market economy. Yeah. We were facing, if we wanted to become an industrial power, we needed to provide some what's called infant industry protection, because we were the infant. We were the infant. And the notion that you could build a domestic industrial base as an infant, but what we've also learned from history is it's really important, if you're going to do that, to have always in mind that what you want to do is produce infants which very much look to the rest of the world for markets. Okay,
Yeah.
so you want export-oriented infants, okay? The failures of tariff policy have always been associated with import substitution, where a country will say, I don't want to buy stuff from the rest of the world, so I'm going to build it myself, okay? And then what you do is you tend to build firms and products and technologies which are not as good as the things you're protecting yourself for. But if you say, I want to develop a set of firms which will be way out there in the rest of the world competing, meaning the best, it's much, much better. So it depends upon the other policies that tariff policy is used with. I think there are some examples in the US where it has been successful.
Well, but when we look at pre-Trump, the latest Trump administration,
Yes.
and we're looking at innovation hubs and how the US has led the way, what are some of the basic factors of what has created innovation in the way that the US have done very successfully? Essentially, why aren't there more Silicon Valleys around the world?
Right. You know, living in that part of California for a large part of my life, there have been many, many visitors coming through asking that question. And it's really forced us to think hard about what is essential to the development of these hubs. And I think I am going to start with the support for basic science, because you will find that the three major hubs in the United States are basically located around major research universities, okay? Right. And so the basic science support is coming largely from the federal government, a little bit in some cases from the state government, but overwhelmingly it's federal government money. The money is allocated in a competitive way. There are very serious councils that evaluate proposals. The proposals tend to be pretty open-ended. So, you know, you might in the biomedical area be talking about some, you know, basic genetic research. You're not really there trying to develop a drug. You're trying to understand the human genome. Yeah. Okay, that's what you're trying to do. But then what happens is the basic science leads to a potential product or service. The best example here by far is really Google and the creation of Google, because the creation of Google came from a support for a professor at Stanford, and he had 2 research assistants, and they basically came up with the search modality that ended up being Google. And at a certain point, they left the university to set this up. So this is the next stage, because the next stage really is, and the comparison here with Europe is important.
I was about to ask.
We have the venture capital
yeah.
industry of the world. So essentially, as these ideas come out of the university, they need to be funded, because they've been funded so far by basic science, but basic science isn't going to take them any further. Then you get venture capital, and you get private equity capital, and you get the ability to finance these organizations that are just developing into enterprises. And again, you see that absolutely in the case of Google. You see that lots around in Massachusetts, where actually the hub is more of a biotech hub. You see it more in that industry, because that's where the specialist venture capital firms go, okay? So those are 2 essential parts, and neither part is working as nearly as well in Europe or in other parts of the world. Now, we also have talent. We actually, you know, the numbers have been very clear that a very large number of our Silicon Valley firms have been started, or certainly are led by Americans who were not born in America.
Yeah.
They immigrated to America. They became American citizens, but they immigrated. And those firms have also been the ones that have pushed so hard for the H-1B visa, the visa which allows the technical talent to come in and work with the firms. Because we don't have all of the engineering talent that we needed. I think over time what's happened is schools of engineering in the United States have really stepped up. They've stepped up their game but I would say for quite some time, lots of American students were not choosing engineering. They were choosing business maybe, they were choosing finance maybe, they were choosing, I would say, physical therapy rather than engineering. They were not doing as much science, math training. So it was important that we had that opportunity to recruit the talent we needed. And a lot of students are also drawn to these great research universities. So they're foreign students, they come for a degree, they end up working in the labs. They end up working for professors who actually are doing the research for a product that may ultimately be produced in the United States. But the postdocs are kids from all over the world, brilliant students from all over the world. Okay, so I want to emphasize that. We have very good intellectual property protection in the United States. We have, at least so far, a rules-based order so that people feel that their contracts are enforced by the judiciary and by the rules. And therefore, you get through this system and there are various ways you can exit. You can exit into becoming a publicly traded company. You can be bought by another company. A lot of acquisitions go on. All of that is with contracts and IP and rules of law.
But it seems, and maybe it's because you've so eloquently put it so brilliantly simply, but it's a simple recipe with those key ingredients.
Yes.
You know, that there must be around Europe. There are UK and Europe and rest of the world. There are leading scientific and engineering universities that are right next to, you know, research labs that then can provide and find venture capital funding that they can then move it to here. And there are intellectual property laws that exist. But why isn't it making the same cake?
You know, I don't think that it's not, or let me put it this way, I would disagree with you. I don't think the venture capital industry is as large or as compelling in Europe. A lot of the way European firms tend to be much more financed on banks than on the equity market or on risk capital. So the risk capital equity market transition, if you are going to use bank lending tends to want collateral. Bank lending tends to want a clear-cut revenue stream that's already there, okay? The venture capitalists are saying, I'm taking a risk here. I'm not sure what that revenue stream is going to look like. And by the way, of course, most of the firms that a venture capitalist invests in don't succeed. And they know that, the venture capitalists know that. A bank's not going to do that. So I think it's the difference in the character of the capital market that, and I think the UK is interesting. I mean, the UK has actually, I think, done a lot in the past decade to actually really, really up the game in terms of their research universities working on technology. Cambridge really, I think, has developed a kind of hub around itself now in terms of a Silicon Valley hub. So I think they've taken a lot of action to do that. I still think my understanding of a lot of European universities is the link between the professors and the postdocs and the doctorants with the business community is really not there. It's not there. And so it's very hard to make that transition to a business idea and then get it out the door.
Well, it's been fascinating talking with you, Laura. I really appreciate your time. I wish we had more time to talk about it. But
thank you very much. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it as well.